We good with printmaking, most of us? Okay, cool. This is good. It's like half and half. That's fun. Well, that's me. That's how you spell my name. That says artist. I used to have like a whole bunch of stuff that said like artist, human of earth, friend of Lars, things like that. And then I would like send it around. My friends would always mess with it and add all this extra stuff, and it was too much. So I just changed it and shortened it to artist. But artist, yeah, I like the term artist because it's different than like printmaker, painter. It's kind of like limiting almost that way. That has nothing to do with anything. So let's see. There we go, yay. So I'm a printmaker. I work mainly large scale, but recently I've been doing a lot of smaller work, but it's all print related. You can see like the matrix displayed next to the block, and I'm gonna have better examples of this further. But yeah, this is the Art Center of Corpus Christi. I don't know if you guys, like Marcy said, I'm from Corpus Christi. It's a really fun little place to grow up. Not a great place to live, but like a fun place to like be raised, you know, because there's like the beach and there's a lot of like surfing and skating and like a fun like Latin influence that I really enjoy a lot. But anyways, when I was there at the Art Center of Corpus Christi, they had this really wonderful grant program where they offered this funding to artists to create like a mural for the outside of the building. And that traditionally it would go to painters, right? Because what you need is, it's got like a sort of like Spanish colonial like architecture, right? A lot of archways, things like that. So the panels would be cut out in these arch shapes, and then painters would get the grants, they would paint them. And I had seen them kind of cycle through artists, and I thought, I bet if I submitted like a weird proposal that I was like, I want to take those wood panels, carve them, and like put them in, that I would definitely get it. And I submitted it, and they were like, that's the craziest idea ever, like let's do that. So we were able to make these. There's 6 of them, but I can only fit 4. I don't know what I'm doing in that photo, and I haven't figured it out. So I think I was walking by and somebody snapped a photo. Looks kind of weird, but anyways, that was at this really wonderful little gallery in Santa Fe, actually, called Hecho Mano. That's really fun. But anyways, so I make these, let me go back. I make these woodcuts. So really, how much time do I have when I do this?
As much as you want.
Till 1:30.
Till 1:30, okay, good. This program, this grant program, I apply for it, and the board is like split on whether to give it to me or not. I'm like 22 at the time. It's a really big grant. I have no previous experience with getting grants whatsoever. The director really likes the idea. The board is like, don't give this kid this money. He's gonna blow it. It's not gonna work. But I was like, I can totally do this. It actually got to the point to where I had to go to a board meeting and like advocate for the project, like in an answer, like just get grilled with everyone's questions and like let them know that I was like a competent person. Anyways, I get this grant. I told them that I'd be finished carving it in 2 months. So I get this grant, I get the money, I buy the supplies, I hire a bunch of friends, I blow through the money, and it's all gone, and the project isn't finished. And it's like horrible. So like the 2 months go by, and I have 1 halfway carved. And they were all due, like all 6 were due. And I was just like, I can't carve as fast as I thought I could. I can't pay these people anymore. The money's all gone. And luckily the director was very understanding, and she was like, you know what, take your time. I'll give you another 2 months. Another 2 months go by. I've got like 1 done and a half of another. And she was like, all right, well just take a little bit more time. So I keep going. 2 years later, this was like, I was living in Corpus. I moved to Dallas, and I'm like, I got to take these blocks with me, and I'm leaving the city with your blocks. I haven't finished. She was like, it's okay. We just want them to look good. Take as much time as you need. She gave me like a lot of grace, whereas other people probably would have like sued me or something. So she was like, take as much time as you need. We want them to look very beautiful. And I was like, okay. So again, 2 years go by, and then I get a phone call from her, and she's just like, so when you bring the blocks here next month? And I was like, okay, we got a deadline. So I worked with a bunch of people on Instagram, just different people that I'd met in Dallas, right? Printmakers. Luckily, I ran into this guy, Braulio Condi. He's a printmaker here in Dallas. And he wasn't at the time when I met him. I was doing a workshop at the Oak Cliff Cultural Center, a woodcut workshop. And he just happened to come in. Like, he didn't really even know what was going on. And he was like, I really like this medium. I like working in it. I will work for you for free in your studio if you teach me how to do printmaking. So I was like, great. So he came in, he helped me finish them, and me and him, I'm teaching him printmaking as he's working on these blocks with me. We finally finished. The art center had spent like $2,000 to print them. Well, I didn't have access to this press that we thought we were gonna have. There's a really wonderful print shop in Austin called Flatbed Press. And Flatbed was gonna, they quoted us about $11,000 to $18,000 to print it. And the art center was like, we're not giving you any more money. You're gonna print these by yourself. And I was like, that's kind of impossible. They're 8 feet long, 4 feet wide. So during this time, I'm making a lot of posts about the blocks. People have been following the project for like 2 years now of me just like carving these blocks. So I put out like this weird like call to arms thing on Instagram where I'm just like, look guys, like I built up a following, had like 8,000 people following the project. And I was like, I'm driving these blocks down to Corpus Christi to print them at the art center. They're finally finished. I need help printing them. I don't have any money, I can't pay you, but I can give you like pizza and beer if you come and help. And so we drove them down, we laid them out, we started rolling ink, and every day a group of random people would show up to help print. We had people like one day a car full of students from UT Austin came down, and they were just like, we saw your post on Instagram and we've been following it, we came to help. So they'd stay there for a couple hours, and then they were like, we gotta go back to Austin. They'd get in the car and they'd leave. The next day we had a group of students from UT El Paso. We borrowed some grad students from UT Corpus Christi, and every day we had no idea who was gonna come. It was me and my friend Ben Sorrell. We were the only for sure people that would be there. And at minimum, it takes about 5 people to pull something that size. So every day we would just sit and be like, let's see if somebody shows up. And every day, like a random group of kids would just show up from Instagram. They were like, we saw what you were doing, and and it was a lot of fun. It was a great project. But that's kind of, I had to make them that size because it matched the size of the building. So that's really where the scale of my work came from, was I was kind of forced to work in that scale. So again, every day we'd get together, we'd roll the ink. We printed for 6 days straight, and every day we could make 3 prints. It took 4 hours to make 1 print. So we'd roll the ink, and everybody would, it's almost the size of the table, right? It's 4 by 6, and I brought one that I'll show you in a minute. Everybody would get a section, and they'd get these glass barons. So first we'd roll the ink on the woodcut. You can think of it like a giant stamp, right? It's essentially a big stamp. It's a piece of MDF that I carve out, and then we roll the ink on it. We put the paper down, and everybody gets like a 2 foot by 2 foot square. They apply pressure to transfer the ink from the woodcut onto the paper. So everybody does this, and then we move down a little, we do this, and after about 2 hours, we like peel it back, we see how it looks, and if it's good, we peel the whole thing. So this is, if it would load, there it goes. This is us pooling one of the prints. So that was a girl, Stephanie. She was a student at the local community college, just showed up to help. Yeah, and we pull them like that. Every single one comes off. And then we would, we ended up with this really beautiful set of prints. This series is called The Endless Endeavor. And it tells the story of my family coming from Mexico City to the US. And it starts with my grandfather and it ends with my daughters, and it kind of explores the generations in between. It like tells the story of my family. And it does that in a chronological order. The prints can be read right from left to right and up and down. So the stories go, every image represents something, and then it goes through and it tells this kind of beautiful story of a migration through Texas and everything like that. I finish that. Is this useful? Is this helpful at all? Is this okay? I finished that project. I never want to carve anything that big again, right? 8 feet, too much. And especially 6 of them, it was crazy. So I wanted to make something smaller. So I start making blocks that are about 5 feet, around there. 36 by 62 is the sweet spot, and I still kind of carve it 36 by 62. Those dimensions come from what the back of my Jeep was at the time. I was like, what's the biggest thing I could comfortably fit in my car? Measured it out with the seats down, I was like 62 inches. And then how wide is the car? 36. I have pieces in like the permanent collection of the Amon Carter Museum of Art that are all 36 by 62, and it's just the back of my Jeep. That's like what the size is. And it really, that's just came from like kind of necessity of like what I can fit, what I can handle, and move. So I start working in this, so that's like kind of scale, right? That's like the sweet spot. I really enjoy carving at that size now. Yeah, these are all like older. This is a series called the Home Blocks. We don't need to worry about that. So I'm printing this. Remember that shop I'd mentioned earlier, Flatbed. It was, they quoted us like $18,000 to print there. It was way too much. They do this program, right, where it's called co-publishing. It's by invitation only, and they invite an artist to come, and then artist gets to print for free. They eat the rest of the cost, and then they bring in a patron to pay for the other part of this edition. They've had artists like James Searles. You have the sculpture out there in the garden. James Searles has gone and done the co-publishing thing. Luis Jimenez, a lot of really wonderful artists. Luckily, randomly, Catherine Brimberry, the woman who runs Flatbed, she saw the giant prints that we were supposed to print there and was like, these are beautiful. I want you to come. So I was invited to do a co-publishing thing. So I went, and Catherine Brimberry at Flatbed Press, they did the co-publish, and we brought in a third patron, whose name is Gilberto Cardenas. And Gilberto Cardenas is a wonderful patron of the arts. He owns the largest private collection of Latino art in the world. His house is insane. He's got a Frida Kahlo painting in the hallway. It's crazy. He's a massive champion of the arts, and he paid to double the edition. So I created these blocks for that collaboration. This is us pulling them. This is the first time I add color to my work. Catherine Brimberry saw what I wanted to bring. I said I wanted to do it in black and white, and she's like, I'm not printing anything in black and white, you have to add color. So I was really against it at first, but once we started making them, it was so beautiful. I was very happy with them. This is Alex Giffen. She was the master printer there at the time, and we're able to make these really wonderful, beautiful prints, and all of it, again, is just kind of through carving the block, applying the ink, adding pressure in one way or another, whether that's by hand or using an etching press. In this case, we used the etching press. These are the two blocks that we end up with. This is called Heat and Epilogue. These are the ones actually that were acquired by the Amon Carter Museum last month, actually. And then I believe this one is at the Blanton Museum of Art. They're probably my favorite prints that I've made. I really love them a lot. They're in a series called Familia, and they talk about my family currently, things like that. A lot of my work centers around family, culture, heritage, generational assimilation, things like that. So I do that. It's funny because I'm trying to decide what's actually interesting and like what's a waste of time to talk about it. Yeah.
Ben, I love your compositional device of stacking things vertically. Mm-hmm. Your use of objects as well as text and signs. Can you just sort of maybe go through some of the iconography for us, some of the symbolism
Absolutely.
Of one of those, and talk about how it relates to you and your family?
Yeah, so this is Epilogue, which is one of my favorite pieces. And it kind of, this is like around the time my wife and we start having children. So we've got like 3 little girls. We've got a 6-year-old, a 4-year-old, and a 1-year-old baby, tiny little baby. And I was thinking a lot about this sort of idea of like family, and like it's strange, like once I have kids, like you kind of have kids, and I don't think I even viewed my parents as human beings until I had a kid. And then I was like, oh, I get it. Like you guys are just 2 people that fell in love and then tried your best. Like that was that, but like in my mind, they were always kind of this like, almost like a deity figure, which is just like, oh my gosh, like how could they do that or this or that? And then you're like, oh, they're just people. Like, but I didn't realize that until I had kids. So kind of understanding that sort of cycle, that's the sort of idea, right? That there's this flow. So down here, this is like an altar, and it's on top of like a mountain, and then above that, these would be like our ancestors. So these are calaveras, which are typically like, it's like Mexican folklore of like, they kind of represent, it's this place that you go to afterwards, right? Like the reimagined dream of Teotihuacan and stuff like that. But anyways, our ancestors, and then they're like celebrating. There's a lot of like papel picado back there. There's confetti, sparklers, things like that. This is salud, which is like to your health. And the ancestors are literally supporting, raising up, and lifting new life and like a future generation. So the ice cream truck represents the kids. It says Ice Cream Niños. And then here's since 2017, which is the first year that someone of the next generation was born. So there, which is like our youngest generation, like me, my brothers, my sister, like all of our little kids. And then it's just filled with like words of affirmation. This is like now colder than ever, like give it your best, this idea of like this sort of support system. This is a giant Pacific octopus. They are known to be great mothers. What they do is they'll go and they like dig a hole, right? Like at the seafloor, they lay their eggs in it and then they lay on top of the eggs. And they won't leave if they feel that the area is not secure or safe. They do this to such an intense degree that they've been observed in nature to stay there until the eggs hatch. And once the eggs hatch, they actually collapse and die of exhaustion. But this idea of like protecting it and cradling it. So the octopus would represent my wife and I sort of like protecting and covering this thing, and this idea that like life is kind of about them now. It's like not about ourselves anymore, this idea of protection. So it kind of goes over there. They're passing a piece of paper that says divide, devour. They're passing divide and they're receiving devour. There's a scripture in the Torah that says that Benjamin shall raven like a wolf. In the morning he'll devour the prey, in the evening he'll divide the spoils. That idea, the passage of time, that in your youth you devour something, so in your older age you have something to divide to your children, the people, things like that. It's almost like an assignment and it cycles through. So this octopus is, oh, what did I do? This octopus is dividing, and they're given the assignment to devour. The whole thing moves through. There's literally like every tiny little thing represents something, and I could go through it literally all day. But it all kind of flows like that. The stacks sometimes are, it depends on, like if it's so like sometimes it's based on like a narrative, right? If it's telling a story, sometimes the object that is at the base of that is there because that's where it fits in the story. And without that, that basically, for example, right? Like previously I had the one with the elephant. At the bottom there was a rock, and on top of it it said "Quien más quieres," which is something my grandfather used to say. The rock is there because he represents the foundation of our family. So sometimes it's symbolic. Other times it's chronological. You can read it like a sequence of events. It just depends. But normally everything represents something, and the stack is intentional as well. When I make my work, I start with writing. I just get like a blank sheet of paper and I write everything that I want to say. From that writing, I figure out the themes, and then I assign imagery to represent the themes, and then reassemble it in a way that could be read the same way that the story is read. So every piece that I have has like some weird note paper thing somewhere in a flat file, like in an archive drawer. More printing. These are brayers. So ink gets rolled out on the brayers, and then the color gets rolled onto the block. You print it, peel it up. That's essentially how it works.
You have stacks and stacks and stacks of preliminary studies and sketches and drawings, because the compositions are so complex.
Yeah.
I imagine you have to do
I have like literally like maybe 2 sketches, and I wouldn't even say they're very sketchy. They're definitely not drawings, like they're sketches. Because really the idea is more like something that represents this needs to be here, and it needs to look like this, and it needs to be in this position. So I have certain sketches of like finished woodcuts that if you look at the sketch, there's maybe 1 or 2 things that actually made it to the final cut. And then in other cases, there's just like a blob there that says the word like toaster or something, you know, and they could just, I know to draw the toaster. I do that because most of the drawing process actually takes place on the wood block itself. So something that's like 5 feet, I kind of climb on top of, and then I'll start drawing. And then I'll lift it up, look at it, and I'll be like, that's not right. And then I'll go in and erase the whole thing, lay it down, do another 5-foot drawing, pick it up. That's not right, put it down. I would use a projector, but the problem is that when you draw something like this big and then you project it at 5 feet, you lose a lot of detail. And then it becomes chunky and like weird. And I would rather just draw everything and then, you know, be able to fit all those tiny little details in that. So I would say I have maybe like 2 sketches for every like weird thing. This is a series called Las Hermanas. It's about my daughters. I'm gonna jump through that. What is this video? Oh, look, that's us printing another one. It's fun to watch print pulls. So this is us pulling a block called Florence.
Florence is your
second.
second oldest
Yes.
child.
Oh, these are in the gallery.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. The Las Hermanas series is in the gallery.
Yeah. So yeah, that's literally how we make them. We print them, we pull them off. It takes around 2 weeks to dry. The whole process from start to finish is months long. I would say it takes me about maybe a week to kind of get the idea refined, drawn. It takes me about another maybe week and a half to actually draw it, another about a week to 2 weeks to carve it, and then the printing process takes the longest. Proofing it, transferring layers to add the color, and then running the actual prints themselves. I believe the edition of this is 20, I think. It'll say on the print, I'll have to go look. But yeah, to make that many prints, it'll take maybe like 4 months. And then for them to all dry and everything, it's pretty intense. Because if you want 40 prints, you need to make 50, 55, because a lot of them are going to be bad. So the ones that are perfect, you keep. The other ones you rip up, you shred, you throw away. And then when the blocks are finished, you don't want to make any more, so you actually scribe the block. You rip through it so it can't be made again. Or you just destroy it, cut in half. I drill holes in them so that I can put them on the wall, like just show them. So it kind of serves two purposes. On one hand, I destroy it by drilling holes in it, and on the second, I can still kind of see it because it can stay on the wall.
Do you do a different block for each color?
I do. Every block has a different color. There are methods around that, and I have some examples. But mainly what I do is chiaroscuro woodcuts. So yeah, one block for color, one block for the outline, or we call it the key block. This is an example of where you can get multiple colors, but you just still only 2 blocks, right? So this is what's called a puzzle block. It's exactly what you think. It's a puzzle. So what we do is we take the main block, the key block, right? The outline block, that black carving, the original. We print it, we peel it up, and while it's wet, we slide that block out and we put a new one in. Then we lay it down and we run it through the etching press so that that design is transferred to the new block. Does this make sense so far? Now, when it's transferred to the new block, you now have this weird outline that is, again, sized to the key. So then you take a jigsaw, just like from the garage, and you chop up all the pieces that you want to be individual. After that, you can take all the ink and you can roll each piece a different color, reassemble it so that it makes something like that, right? Which these are also in the gallery. So every piece can be something else. And it's just because, you know, you took a jigsaw and you cut out the mountain range. So now the mountain range can be purple. You could slide it in, but it's one block. So typically, if someone were to see the print inside of the gallery at the front, they would assume that there was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 blocks somewhere. There's 8 different blocks. But in this case, there's one. And we just chopped it up, put it all back together like this. So every piece is inked individually and literally just puzzled back together. I made all of those prints in the gallery plus 3 more that aren't in there in 4 days. It was crazy. We were like, and I had the flu. I was like in there just Dayquil, shotgun, and Red Bulls and like doing crazy stuff. I was a visiting artist at Florida State College in Jacksonville. So while I was there, those things, they're okay, you know, they're kind of like, you know, like you go and, you know, it's work. You give the lecture and then you go, you do the grad studio visits. You got to hang out with the kids contractually, talk to them, high five them, stuff like that. But something that's always amazing about those things is you can work it into the contract that I want to publish work while I'm here. The university eats the whole cost of it and then you can leave with a whole bunch of prints. It's awesome. But you have to kind of squeeze that in there. So I show up the first day and I have like a sketch. And I'm like, I need like 5 grad students, and then like just grab them, and we're like, we're gonna make something crazy. So I had a kid carve out the whole sky for me. I was over there working on the bottom. Their printmaking professor, Patrick Miko, he used to work at this really great print shop called Tandem in Wisconsin, in Madison. Tandem prints all the prints for like David Lynch and stuff like that. He's a very talented printmaker. The puzzle block was actually his idea. he saw how fat my lines are, and he was like, you have really fat lines, like they're really chunky, you can hide a blade in there. And I was like, I don't understand what you're saying. And he was like, because the lines are so fat, we can do like a jigsaw, we can cut it and hide the line. And so I didn't fully understand what he meant until we started printing them. All of this, like confetti, those are just pieces of Mylar that are individually inked and sprinkled on top of the block. And then we print them through there, peel it off, and then all the Mylar bits come up, but they've transferred the color. So anyways, yeah, I show up on the first day. I'm like, I want to make these. And he was like, dude, I will live here. Like, I don't care. We have a couch at the university. I'll sleep in the print shop. We would work until about 4 a.m. every day. And then he would sleep on the couch. I had an Airbnb right next to the school. And then the next day I'd come back in 9 a.m. and we would just hit it again. And it was wonderful. We used offset ink. All of these are offset ink. It's the only offset ink that we have in the show. Everything else is printed with relief ink, etching ink, litho ink. Offset ink is very strange. They use it mainly for newspapers, things like that. But a newspaper shop closed down because nobody uses that type of printing anymore. Patrick got all of this ink for free, so we used it. One of the wonderful things about that offset ink is that these were dry for me to take when I left the school. You remember earlier I said that it took 2 weeks for those prints to dry. These are dry in a few hours. And it's just the type of ink, that offset ink, it runs papers, newspapers and things like that, and they're dry and hot off the press, ready to go out. So with that ink, we were able to really make wonderful, wonderful prints here.
So Ben, these are monotypes, right?
Yes.
So they're one of a kind.
Yeah.
So each color iteration is its own. There's not an addition.
Yeah, and in addition to that, that's funny. And in addition to that, some of them, like I said, have this confetti. Others don't. They're all really unique in their own way. This print actually glows in the dark. It's the only one that glows in the dark. We did that by mixing glow-in-the-dark screen printing ink with the relief ink. And like the skull glows, and then like 2 of these. So we like blasted it with sunlight and then put it inside, shut all the lights off, and the skull just glowed. We were like, oh, this is so cool. So yeah, they're all different. They're all their own thing. Wonderful. Really great stuff. Oh, this is the gallery inside of the school. Yeah, we that print is wet, right? Like we're printing there. We hadn't gotten any good ones yet, and part of like the visiting thing is that you have a show at the university. So we staged the show, and that wall was empty because he was like, "We're gonna pull a print," and I was like, "I don't think we're gonna get this print," because the last day of my visit, we haven't gotten any good ones yet. The reception is in like an hour. And we're in the print shop, and he's like, "We're gonna get one," and I was like, I think we need to get out of here and go shower. And he was like, no, it's fine. And we get one, like we pull this one, and we're like, it's beautiful, like it works. And the reception's in like 30 minutes. And he was like, everybody grab a corner, and we walked the print across campus, like the whole way over there. And the gallery director was furious because she had to like pull ladders out and hang something 30 minutes before everybody showed up. But it looks really great. And yeah, we went, pinned it up, and then kind of had somebody stand by it the whole night to like, don't bump it, because it was, yeah. But it was really great. Printmaking is wild. This is in the gallery too. I have a lot of stuff in the gallery in this presentation. That's great. This is a wonderful piece called Self-Reflection. It's kind of like a snapshot of, there's a lot of representation of things, right? This is a wolf skull, kind of also echoing the narrative that I had said earlier about the Benjamin ravaging like a wolf. Yeah, and everything, it's a whole lot. The rocket and the planet is a reference to the Manchester-Liverpool Railway. You familiar with that? When it opens up, they have 2 engines. The first 2 locomotives to exist, like ever. They were called the Rocket and the Planet. One was fast, one carried a lot of people. Anyways, I can go into all that and why it moves around, why it's where it is. But yeah, so this was my kind of first crack at like a self-portrait based on imagery. And it's kind of just encapsulates everything from that year and different ways I was feeling and stuff. It's kind of funny to look at now because it was like, because it's just interesting life, like you look at it and you're like, this was a hard year. And then 2 years later, you're like, that year was cake. Like this year sucks. But I actually carried that block around with me. I almost threw it out. I almost threw it away. I drew it, carved a little bit on it and was like, I hate this block. Put it away. 6 months would go by, I'd pull it out and I'd be, this isn't that bad. And I would carve it a little bit. And this is trash. And I'd throw it away. And I was actually moving studios. I had a studio at the Gomar Cultural Center for a few years, and then I moved to the Tin District over in West Dallas. And while I was moving studios, I was just throwing wood blocks away, just woodcuts, because it's too much stuff. I was just throwing them in the dumpster. And I almost threw this one away. And I had it, and I thought, you know what? Even though I don't like it, I'm really about halfway through. I should just finish it just to finish it. And this is actually one of my favorite woodcuts. I like the way it looks. So I'm really glad I kept it.
So can you explain the imagery? What's there?
I can, yeah. So this is Spanish for awaiting orders. I really felt like, again, at the time, I kind of was trying to figure out what was going on. I felt like I was doing a lot of really great things at the time, I was getting a lot of good opportunities. At this point, I had done I was doing 3 solo shows a year, every year. I was getting to do solo shows in Santa Fe, Detroit, right, Florida, Atlanta, really great stuff. And then there was a period where everything kind of stopped. I just kind of stalled it out to kind of reevaluate everything, and felt like I had a lot of momentum, but I stopped it. And this is supposed to kind of represent this idea of just being stalled and not moving, being clearly ready for something and positioned for something, but just kind of stuck and not really knowing where to go. It's kind of just the overall theme of it, and everything is just kind of awaiting orders, and you have all the stuff that you need, but you're not really going anywhere or doing anything. And yeah, my father, growing up, he was a pastor, so there's also a lot of religious imagery in my work. This is a ram's horn that you would use to anoint people, right? And that's the oil coming out of it. Things like that, which is how they would go around and they would anoint people with the oil, and it all kind of goes in there. Yeah, a lot of different stuff like that. I printed this the same year I printed this, which is a block called El Otro Lado, which talks about border politics, things like that. This idea of the American dream and what it was in the 50s versus what it is now, things like that. Talks a lot about my grandfather, who came here with nothing and made a very decent life for himself, accumulated a lot of property, and was able to kind of do all just the wonderful stuff he needed to do, and just the reflections of that now. It's pretty interesting. I made a bunch of them. I don't think I have a photo, but I made 7 of them, or they're here too. I made a bunch of them, and there are different colors, and the idea is that when they're displayed, they would look like papel picado, like the banners that are all different colors. I've experimented with different ways of hanging them, and I can't figure out a right way to make them look like papel picado. They always just look weird. Yes?
I know we're supposed to wait.
Oh, you're fine.
But the globe, I guess it's a globe.
Yeah.
On the left. What is it?
It's a globe. You got it. Yeah, it's just upside down, and that's actually in reference to a masterwork that was created back in early 1900s. There was another artist who actually made that, except he made a flat map that was upside down. He was from South America, and he basically made it to talk about the absurdities of we're a marble floating in space. There is no up, there is no down. There's this idea, and kind of talking about institutionalized white supremacy or just oppression, and the idea that someone at some point put themselves above you. Somebody decided that they were on the top and you were on the bottom, and it was just this challenging idea of something as simple as the way you grow up looking at the world. And I always thought that was very powerful, not just because of the narrative behind it, but because his woodcut was really bad. It wasn't good. It was poorly done. It was printed awful, but it was just this powerful woodcut, and that always kind of stuck with me because it showed me that art can be powerful regardless of whether you have talent or not, and that everybody should make art. Everybody should experiment with creating something, and because you have something inside of you that is very powerful, that would be great to let out and explore. And when I saw his woodcut, I remember looking at it at first and just thinking this is one of the ugliest prints I've ever seen. And then during the lecture, they kept talking about it more and more, and I just kept falling in love with it and being wow, this is powerful. This guy had something really powerful to say, but no talent. And the work has stood the test of time just because it's not all necessarily about making something beautiful. In the same way, there's extremely beautiful work that is meaningless, that means nothing. So it kind of flows both ways, but yeah, anyways. That's me talking. again, like I'm doing right now. That was us, me talking about these and kind of walking through the whole thing. That's me talking again more recently. That's at the Kimball Art Museum. They installed that piece next to the Michelangelo painting, which was really cool and really inappropriate, but wonderful. I kept thinking like somebody should stop this. Like somebody should come in and be like, this is not okay. But they just kind of let it roll. These right here, can I roll that out now or did you want to do the Q&A first?
Whatever you want to do.
Let's do, because I wanted you guys to all kind of get out of your seats and come over here. So I think it would be easier to do a Q&A right now. And then I brought one of these 8-foot ones to show you that we can touch. Because the ones in the gallery, they're kind of paper and fragile. So I brought one that we steamrolled actually. So those were the ones that we printed by hand. But a few of them I wanted to have like on like a canvas that you could wrap. And so what we did was we inked up the block similar to what we were going to do. And then we carried the block outside. We all put it down. I rented a steamroller like that they use for the streets. I took this canvas out and then I just ran it over with a steamroller and then reversed over it with the steamroller. And we peeled up this wonderful print that you can all touch, pull, feel, and like you can feel the viscosity of the ink. And I can talk to you a little bit about one of like some of the dangers of like printing and what happens sometimes if things aren't registered. And I have it here that I can roll out. But anyways, if there's any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer.
And yes, let's use the microphone, people, so when we record it, viewers can hear.
What kind of clients do you have that buy these prints?
So the giant ones, mainly universities and museums. Not a lot of people have houses that can fit like 16 feet by like 8 feet. So the Eamon Carter Museum of Art, the Blant Museum of Art, the Zuckerman Museum of Art, the Museo del Barrio in Brooklyn. Trying to think of who else. The Mexican Art Museum in Austin, the National Museum of Mexican American Art in Chicago. I'm forgetting some.
What about in Mexico?
No, not really. No, it's very fascinating actually because there's normally a pretty intense riff in the art world between what is considered Mexican art and what is considered Chicano art. Chicano is anybody American born of Mexican descent. I actually have a friend who lives in California, in LA. His name is Pavel. Pavel is from Oaxaca, but was raised in Riverside. I don't know if you're familiar with the Cheech Museum. Cheech Marin has a museum. It's a Chicano museum. Well, me and my friend Pavel, I had a show in LA like 2 weeks ago, and I was visiting with him, and I was like, I want to go see the Cheech, so he was taking me there. And while we were walking up, he's very involved in the community. He's in a lot of museums there. And I was like, do you have any work in this museum? And he was like, no, he won't collect my work because he says I'm not a Chicano artist, I'm a Mexican artist. And I was like, whoa, like that's pretty intense. But that's like a real thing that kind of exists of like this division between what is American Mexican art basically, and then what is authentically Mexican, the Diego Riveras and the Frida Kahlos, Leopoldo Mendez, people like that. And what is like, what is American? I think it's a little ridiculous, but yeah.
And I assume you've seen the Diego Rivera's in Detroit, right?
Yeah, the big murals and yeah.
Have you done anything like that with printmaking?
This is the largest I've ever done. I don't know if I would want to go any bigger. There is a woman who makes woodcut murals. Her name is Latoya Hobbs. She's actually a professor at Micah, I believe, a printmaking professor there, and she's done the biggest woodcuts I've ever seen, and they're about mural size, something that would be comparable to that. But yeah, that's so much work. I'd rather paint it, yeah.
The wood that you use, what type is it, and how is it created that it's large?
So I use MDF, like from Home Depot. I just go to Home Depot, and they sell it in 4x8 sheets, and I just buy the MDF from Home Depot. If I need it smaller, they have a cutting center. They cut it down there. So then even those giant ones I was telling you that Latoya Hobbs does, she just uses multiple 4x8 panels and then just kind of carves one image all the way through. But yeah, it's just MDF. You can use any kind of wood though. You don't even have to use wood. You can use linoleum. I know a guy here in here in Oak Cliff, and he does demo work. And there's a lot of houses that need to be remodeled that all have those linoleum square tile floors, and he keeps the good ones. If they come up whole, he keeps them and he carves them. He makes beautiful work out of these old linoleum tiles from demolitioned houses. So yeah, you can use almost anything. You can use an eraser, a potato. You ever seen potato printing? Did you guys ever do? Yeah, you can use a potato. You can use anything. Styrofoam. Styrofoam works. You press down into it, make your little matrix, things like that. Yeah. Any other questions?
Anyone else?
Yeah. Do you need the?
Hi, Ben.
Hi.
Fascinating. I love it. I loved when I saw it, and now that you explained the background and the whole process, I'm even more impressed. And I see that how you dress also, there's a lot of creativity. You know,
cool.
I was wondering, did you design your tattoo?
Oh, which one? So these are, how much time do I have? These are, this is a woodcut by Jose Guadalupe Posada. Are y'all familiar with him? He basically popularized the idea of the calavera. All of the stuff that you see now, he really popularized that into mainstream culture. Jose Guadalupe Posada dies, I want to say 1905, like early 1900s, he passes away. But he is such a massive influence on my work, the things I really love what he does. So I got that of him. This is a Michelangelo tattoo. I've friend designed this one. Yeah, but no, this is I'd like to design a tattoo, but also I don't want to, because I don't want to make something that I'm like, this is great, and then they ruin it, and I'm like, oh, it's on me forever, and I got to look at this thing that I don't like. So I'd rather just get other people's work. But Jose Guadalupe Posada is really absolutely incredible. Like, everybody should know about him. Latin America has such a strong bond with printmaking. You can look. Are y'all familiar with Porfirio Diaz? He's Mexico's greatest dictator, like crazy. So Porfirio Diaz has this grip on Mexico for a long time, right? There's a group of printmakers who are printing anti-fascist propaganda, and they're pumping it out of their print shops, and they're being chased around by the federal government. They're trying to murder them and get rid of them. So they're on the run with a printing press. They're going from city to city. They keep publishing this anti-fascist work and pushing it out. It gets to the point where they have to flee Mexico. They come into the United States, and they're printing anti-fascist work from Kansas City, Missouri, all in Spanish, sending it back to Mexico. And there's a document, you can totally see the more they print, the more public opinion sways away from Porfirio Diaz back into this idea of the people and democracy and stuff like that. And all of that can be directly contributed to these printmakers, to these artists. They go back and they're making work and pushing it out. It's really epic. It's a crazy story. You should totally look it up. It has a really sad ending, as those things tend to. But yeah, they all get arrested actually by U.S. FBI people and sent back, deported back to him, where they're jailed and assassinated. So it's kind of crazy. But it's a pretty. But anyways, printmaking, right? That idea. Other artists like Leopoldo Mendez, and just these wonderful Mexican printmakers that they're revolutionaries, really. Printmaking has such an intense place in Mexico, specifically in Oaxaca, where my father lives. There's really intense, everybody's a printmaker. Everybody makes art. It's just a cultural thing. Everybody is making art and doing all this stuff. It's really wonderful. Whereas in the States, if you ask people what printmaking is, I think a lot of people would, I don't know what you're talking about. What is printmaking? So it's interesting, but when you look at the role that it's played in the history of the country, it makes sense that it's more accessible and knowledgeable in Mexico because of all that printmaking did, and how printmaking, one of the reasons that I love, and I'm sorry this is really long, but one of the reasons that I love printmaking is because it has a long history of being the art of the people. Art for the longest time is really just something that exists for oligarchs and the wealthy elite class. Everyday people can't afford art. It's not until printmaking comes around that you can mass produce not only knowledge for people to read and you can see stuff now, but you also get to mass produce images, art, pieces. People have art in their homes for the first time after printmaking is introduced, and I always kind of take great pride in that, and will always like being a part of this idea of the art of the people. And I have a print release that I do every year called The Art of the People. A lot of the work is not unfortunately, because I need to make a living, but it's gone up in price. The museums collect it, stuff like that, but I always want to make sure that everybody can afford the art. So every year I do a series of prints called Art for the People. They're very detailed, extremely underpriced prints, and I make like 60 of each, and then I just do this massive release so that everybody can afford it. I sell them to friends, family, stuff like that, to kind of keep in heartbeat with that Art of the People vibe. I honestly don't even remember what question asked. The tattoo. Sorry. Yeah. Oh.
You have a question? What other artists have influenced you? You mentioned Posada and some others, but
Yeah.
and you've got your Michelangelo tattoo. Have
Right.
you been influenced by Michelangelo or Leonardo or Dürer
Yeah.
or some of those artists?
Yeah. Dürer is interesting too, right? When you start to talk about like the German influence of stuff, right? And some printmakers, you can't talk about like German expressionism without mentioning printmakers like Kathy Kollwitz and people like that. So it's really wonderful. Too many to name really. Kollwitz, Dürer, and more contemporary, right? Would be like Don Nice. I love Don Nice. He's a pop artist from back in the day. Don Nice makes beautiful. He recently passed away, actually, maybe like 6 years ago, not that long ago. I did my master's study on him back in school, and I really love his paintings. Janet Fish, another really great contemporary artist. Warhol's great, yeah. Warhol's fascinating to me, actually. My friends and I talk about it all the time. It's just such a fascinating. So it's interesting to talk about somebody so divisive too. Like that's so interesting. But everything about his life was art to me. I thought it was he did this thing that I think is like hilarious, but also like art in itself. Where his paintings or prints, right? Let's say his prints were like $30,000, but you couldn't buy one. You had to buy them in pairs. So you'd have to spend 60 grand. So he'd be like, why even mention they're 30? He'd be like, these are like $30,000. You have to buy them in pairs. Just something like that is like so hilarious, but like also really like a businessy sort of, I don't know. Yeah, just stuff like that is really, really fascinating to me. I had something like percolating in the back of my head that I was gonna say and it flew right out. Sorry. If it comes back, I'll bring it, yeah.
How you maintain the consistency of ink? Because when you are just going for the section to section, some pressure will be uneven or the so.
Yeah.
So, and even the times passes, the ink evaporates. Something will be also absorbed by the wood. When you are just going to use the MDF, natural fibers absorbs many things.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
how you maintain that thing?
Yeah, there is a process, like what you're saying definitely happens the first time you ink it up. Virtually all the ink is gone. The wood drinks it. The wood takes all the ink. So there's a few things you can do. One of the first things that you can do is make a mixture of shellac and alcohol. So shellac is just like this stuff you can buy at Home Depot that seals wood. And then I dilute it with alcohol. And then before I ink it at all, after I'm finished carving it, I brush all the dust off. And then I take that mixture, half shellac, half alcohol, and I brush the whole thing. That way the ink sits on the top instead of being absorbed into the wood, and you can maintain a little more consistency. But that being said, it's not always perfect. Like I was saying earlier, if I'm gonna make 30 prints, I need to make 45 probably, because only 30 of them are gonna be perfect. The rest are all gonna have something. Sometimes a little goober gets in there, like a little piece of dried ink or something, and then you print it, the whole 5 feet of it is perfect, but like maybe like, it's always like right on someone's eye or like something you can't miss, and then there's just like a white spot, and it's because something got in the way. I've had people like bugs land on there, like right when they're laying the paper down, a butterfly or something comes and gets stuck and you're like, the whole thing is ruined. So yeah, it's hard. I would say that I maintain the consistency of the ink by shellacking before and by making extra prints because I know I'm gonna mess up.
Thank you.
Yeah. Is that it? We good?
I would incorporate the butterfly.
I have a friend who printed a dead lizard. She ran it through the press, and you can see the bones, the rib cage. It's actually pretty cool.
I have two. One about the artists that influenced you. Several months ago, we had an exhibit here featuring Miguel Covarrubias.
Uh-huh.
Did I say that right? Covarrubias. Thank you. And he did caricatures. Do you do caricatures too?
No, not necessarily. No, I don't think so. I try to do a little bit of everything, but not too much. No.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Second, I saw some rocks out here on display. Are they part of your exhibit?
No. That'd be cool though.
His exhibit's over in the Carpenter Lobby Gallery.
Oh, okay. Okay, thank you.
I've seen people carve rocks. I am taking a stone carving class right now, and I'm not good, but I'm getting better. So, yeah. The Creative Arts Center in Dallas. Yeah, I think they're the only stone department in the city.
Where is your studio?
My studio is in West Dallas in the Tin District. In fact, if you pick up the latest copy of D Magazine, I have a feature in it where they talk about the studio in the Tin District. I have one in my backpack. I'll show you when we look at this.
Are you in the picture along with Minji Watras?
Minji.
Is it the?
The big one, yeah, I'm in there. Yeah. Yeah,
You
I'm sitting.
are?
I'm
Okay.
sitting in the front to the left.
My friend is in there with you.
Yeah. Oh, cool.
I've been trying to get you to bring her here.
It's a good spot. There's a lot of really talented artists out there. You should definitely come to the Tin District. It's the highest concentration of artists in Dallas, actually. Depending on who you ask, it's either like 70 or 120.
And they're doing an art walk.
Art
aren't
Walk
they?
West. TIN. Tin District. Yeah. Yeah, Art Walk West is happening. I don't know when, but I'm sure the dates exist, and I can send that information to Marcy, and I'm sure she'd be happy to share it. So, well, thank you. I'm going to roll this out. If you guys want to come over here, I can show you this.
Ben, do you have any photographs of the installation on the exterior of the Corpus Christi
I do.
Art Center?
Yes. Thank you. So there's a few really interesting things that I wanted to show you. The first is how you lay paper down. Typically, if you lay it down and it's not an even flow, which is hard to do outside, right? Because we were steamrolling, the wind comes and everything like that. What will happen is the paper will kind of lean in on itself. And that's how you get this. You see that? That lightning strike that just runs through there? Yeah. So a crease will come and it'll land and that'll mess that up. There's another one right there. You see that? That's pretty common. That's actually, there's a few of my prints that you can kind of see that in. Here's another one. What's really great is since we're outside printing, this is what's wonderful about printmaking, right? Is that you get to sort of see like a snapshot of what was going on in the studio when it's happening. And one of the things you can tell that this was printed outside because you see all these little dots? Those are rocks, dust, sand, things like that from the wind that blew and landed. So you see a whole lot of it up top. You see a few down here, but it's all like dust. What's fascinating about that is because of the process of printmaking, so much is documented in that moment. Somebody could look at this maybe in 300 years, and they would be able to tell this was printed outside just because of the way it was printed. They would be able to see the chaos of the wind because of these rips in here, because of the folding, because of that, because of this. They would be able to see that it was printed probably by the coast because of the sand. So much gets documented in this. And you can even you can kind of feel, you can touch it, please touch it. You can feel areas where there's a lot of ink and areas where there's close to none. And you see that by the value, right? The darker darks, the lighter lights. You can just run your hand across and see that it's those areas. Yeah, that's from sand. It's like sandpaper.
Looks like Starburst.
Yeah, something, I don't remember why we did that, but something happened and I was like, just take it off with sandpaper. And then we ruined it. But yeah, the double striking down there, right? You can see that there was too much ink in that corner. And when the steamroller got it, that it pulled it and drug it. Somebody could probably tell, maybe not that this was printed with a steamroller, but they would be able to tell that it was printed by like a large drum rolling over it instead of like a fine art press.
May we take a picture?
Oh, please do.
Do you like Escher?
Oh,
Do I like what? I'm
Do
sorry?
you like Escher?
I'm not familiar.
oh yes.
MC Escher,
MC Escher.
he did all the kind of
Oh.
stick the staircases.
Yes,
and
yes,
the
yes, yes,
hand
yes,
drawing
yes,
the
yes.
hand.
Yes.
It's very interesting in
Yeah.
marking patterns where the fish are going this way. And
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Your use of flat colors and lots of blacks and things kind of remind me of some of MC Escher's work.
Nice. Yeah. Oh, no, that's it. Yeah. Thank you for listening and hanging out. Thank you for lunching and learning with me.
Excuse me, what's this material that's on?
This is Rocklon Super Suede. You can pick it up from Joann's or anywhere. We got it from Joann's. We just went over there and.
What did you say?
Joann's?
No.
Oh, it's Rocklon Super Suede.
Rock, long?
Rocklon, yeah. ROCLON. Rocklon.
So it's not just plain old cotton, huh?
Probably.
Why do you use that instead of just canvas or linen or something?
Somebody told me to use this. They said that it worked well.
Well, it's got a very fine,
Yeah, I'm happy with it. I'm sorry?
it has a very fine and even texture to it.
Yeah. Yeah, and really what the problem that you would run into probably with using a canvas is that canvas tends to not be as absorbent as certain other things, and what I need is something that's going to really drink the ink and make a good transfer.
Canvas sometimes has a finish on it.
Yeah.
It would prohibit
This is
that.
so durable.
Yeah, you can iron this. I've seen people take these before, and they actually, because they stretch, they've bend it around like a wood frame and like staple it like a canvas, and then it works fine. Yeah, it's really.
To carve. So when you're doing this, you're just carving what like chisel.
I use different U and V gouges, just small U and V gouges, the same size I would use for a little woodcut like this. That's what took so long, is that if you can imagine, this is on a table, and I'm just leaning on it, and I'm carving every line, just like this, every single line. Yeah, well, that's why it was crazy of me to say I could do it in 2 months. I just didn't. I don't know why I thought I could do that.
Is it possible to work with the laser cutting?
Yeah, you can totally do that. The problem with that, the only problem that I've run into with that, is that the tools that you use to carve by hand, they're shaped like U's and V's. So you can think about it like this. If I wanted to leave a line behind, and I carved on either side, the tool, because of the shape, it would make almost like something that did this, right? And you have the strength when you print it and you run it through the press and the drum crushes it. It's relying on the strength of that like ramp shape. With a laser cutter, you have a 90-degree angle. And so what happens is when you run it through, it compresses and it breaks. You can still get some good prints out of a laser cut, but you won't get as many. I have a small wood block that I carved that I got close to 300 prints out of. Not all at once, right? I printed it through the years, but 300 prints. I would imagine that a laser cut block, depending on the wood you used, I would imagine that you could probably get under 100. Which, if you only want 5 or 10, that's perfect.
Because they have now, the computer is all the designs and all these combinations and detail. You develop on the things and you go for all the laser prints. They all do it on the metals.
Yeah.
I have no idea about on. So
Yeah, I've seen it done on wood, but yeah, the right angle normally gives problems. There are so many crazy things you can do now. They have like photopolymer plates. Have you heard of those? Photopolymer plates are like, they're etching plates, right? They're made of aluminum, and what you do is you take like a transparency of your drawing or whatever, you put it on an exposure unit like you would for t-shirts, put the photo plate right on top, hit run, and poof, it blasts it, and then you can just wipe with water the photo plate, and you have an etching plate that was burned. You didn't have to use acid, you didn't have to bite the plate, you didn't have to do anything. It's just this weird new technology that exists that you can have an etching plate that you made in like 5 seconds with light and water. It's pretty incredible.
We had some kids here about a week and a half ago, and we pointed out to them that you have to carve in reverse.
Yeah.
And so that you had to carve the 3 and the 5
Yeah.
and the 7. You had to carve all of that backwards.
Yeah.
And that was not something that these 8, 9, and 10 years olds had thought about. But does that ever become do you have to think in reverse?
Yeah,
as well?
I'm really good at writing words backwards now. Like I can like write sentences backwards, but every once in a while it gets me, especially on something this size, because when you're making something like 8 feet, you're not checking the spelling. You're exhausted, you're jaded, and then it's not until you print it that you look and you're like, oh no. In fact, on one of these, there is a backwards. This one right here, inside of this book. You can't see it. It says written by us, but that S was a Z, and it said written by like yous. And I was like, oh no. And the woman who runs the print shop, she was like, just run them. And I was like, I'm not gonna do that. I'm gonna go buy wood putty. And I had to shut the whole shop down for a day to fix one letter. So I went, we got the putty, I puttied it. I was like, let it dry. And I was like, okay, everybody go home. And everyone just took the whole day off, waited for it to dry, came in the next morning and then went, I was like, okay, let's go. And just like right back to it. But yeah, I missed that one. And there's a lot of text in this. And I was like, I got it all. And then once we printed it, I was like, oh no, it's a Z. Z's and S's mess me up, you know? Because they make sense both ways. So you look at it and you're like, it's fine. And then, yeah, it messes up. Anyways, yeah. But yeah, if there's no more questions.